Welcome back to the Canadian Baseball Network podcast. I'm host Matt Betts, and we're thrilled to be joined by new Niagara University head coach Matt Spatafora. Matt, how's it going?
Good, Matt. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Excited to get going with you here.
Fantastic. Again, we're excited to get the college baseball season started here in a few weeks. But before we kind of jump to the current day, let's jump back a little bit about you being named the new head coach at Niagara University. How did that whole process play out in from your perspective?
Yeah, it was actually it was a whirlwind process, super fast, right? Um, Rob was contacted by William and Mary. I think it was like maybe a couple weeks after the season, and he went through that process with them. It wasn't very long. I think it was about a week in total that he took to make a decision. And then after that, the process just started with me with Niagara to see if I was going to be taking the job, to see if it was a good fit, to see if they wanted me to stay. So, and then that whole process took about a week, and then the rest is pretty much history, is what they say. And I got going in the summer, probably about, I think it might have been end of July, maybe mid July sometime.
Yeah, we actually had Rob on our first episode of this kind of college coaches segment, and he spoke very highly of you. You don't have to share specifics, but how much were you in the process as far as him going to William and Mary, kind of just in the know of where he kind of stood with that?
Yeah, I knew the minute they contacted him, I knew he had let me know. So I was talking to him the whole time. I knew exactly what was going on. So he involved me in the process, which was really nice of him to do. He probably didn't have to do that, but he kept me abreast of everything, and so I had a lot of information too as I was trying to make my decisions moving forward. So that was a really solid thing that he did on his behalf.
Yeah, during that week, did you kind of have an idea if he took that you were going to be obviously in the running for the head coaching position? Just given how long you'd been there and the success that you've had.
Yeah, I mean, the tenure of assistant coach kind of led me to believe that I had a pretty good opportunity to stay if I wanted to stay. And it just fits my lifestyle. It fits, being from Toronto, fits family wise with having a young family. So I was lucky to get the opportunity. I was thankful, and it's been a good situation so far.
So what was that you said it kind of took a week, you're discussing with them. What are those kind of convers again, you don't have to share too many specifics, but what are those general discussions like when you're interviewing for the head coaching position?
Basically, just to see if the visions fit together with where the program was headed and where I wanted to take the program. Pretty much along the same path as what Rob and I had going while he was there. So that really wasn't too far off, and they were happy with, I guess, with what I presented to them and whatnot, and being having such a close familiarization with the program, being there for so long, the transition was really, really easy with regards to fundraising and with regards to budget management and recruiting. It's a unique place that you kind of have to know the ins and outs of. So having the experience that I had, I think it was just, the natural transition.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that transition. I'm sure, like you said, it's easier when you're staying within the same program, but what are kind of the major differences for people that don't kind of understand the coaching world from being an assistant coach at the college level to going to that head coaching position?
Right. So I tell people all the time, they ask me, right? They're like, "Oh man, it must be a huge difference." And as far as the baseball stuff goes, it's a really minimal difference, right? Because I'm still working with the offense and the defense, like I had while Rob was there. I hired a pitching coach, Matt Hape, who handles the pitching staff. So he's got control of that, and we kind of work together as far as game management and stuff. But the baseball stuff is pretty much, day-to-day operations didn't really change. The big thing that changes is all the other administrative work that you have to do, as far as scheduling, as far as budget management, as far as fundraising, all those things like take up a big portion of the day. Whereas as an assistant, you might have a little bit more freedom of working with players and going down to the cage whenever you can, or whenever they ask you to. But as the head coach, you might have a meeting that you have to take care of. You might have to get, you know, the flight lists over to the airport for where you're going that next week. So there's a couple other things you have to that manage your time a little bit better, I think. But still, you can get it all done if you're organized.
Speaking of scheduling, Rob had mentioned that you had reached out to him at William and Mary. You had an open weekend that you were trying to schedule. Is that true?
Yeah, so it's a funny story. His phone was not working well when he left, right? So I had to get a new phone. And by the time they brought this new phone to me, I checked the messages, and there was a message on the phone from a school that we had on weekend three. Well, the message was, we got our conference schedule, we got to cancel the weekend three. Well, this was like, by the time I got my phone and everything, it was like the end of August. So I didn't get an email or anything from the school. It was just that voicemail. So I joked to people that if the message got lost in translation, I was showing up weekend three, and there would have been two other schools there and us waiting to play that series. But long story short, I filled it like right before he was able to call me and say, with his open weekend, because he had some schedule issues as well. So it almost worked out that we went down there, but I'm sure in the future we'll try to figure something out for early in the season.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I would have liked to seen that. That would have been a great matchup.
Yeah.
First year Rob there, and then first year you as a head coach. For the schedule though, you're not really messing around. You're going to Miami on opening weekend. Kind of how does scheduling work as a college coach, and how do you kind of book those types of longer road trips? Because then you go to North Carolina and Purdue after that.
Yep. We're playing North Carolina in Purdue at a neutral site. So for us, right, scheduling at a mid to smaller major, we'll open up down south early in the season, right? Because we obviously can't play home games that early. But we'll look for some guarantee games to help out the budget as we move forward for games later on in the season. We'll look to challenge ourselves to get some regional teams on there to get ready for regional environment. If the case comes that we're fortunate enough to play in a regional, we want to be ready for that. And then we look for teams that are like competition to get ready for conference as we move forward to our conference schedule. So we try to sprinkle in a little bit of all that in the first 4 weeks. Now our conference added two teams to the conference this year, so we have 30 conference games total, which knocked off two non-conference series. So now in the MAC, you have four non-conference weekends before four or three, depending on when you have the bye before your conference schedule starts.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Miami opening weekend, but Niagara's used to going to some of these bigger schools. You beat Florida State. What was that 2, 3 years ago?
It might be yeah, 3 years ago, I think it was the opening night win against Florida State was a great game, and yeah, I mean we play well against the big competition schools, and you know it's still baseball, so you go down there and you just try to play well, play against the game, and let the chips fall where they may.
I was gonna say, how do you prepare your players for a stage like that, especially so early in the season when you're still kind of trying to get a feel for who you are as a team?
Yeah, I mean, we just really talk about playing pitch to pitch and taking the opponent out of it. We come out of the gym at this time of year, so depending on the weather, sometimes we'll be able to get outside and get some inner squads in. We definitely get outside and take ground balls and fly balls on the turf field because that gets plowed for our lacrosse team. But other than that, we just go down there and worry about ourselves. Like I said, play everything pitch by pitch and just kind of get the compete level going and not really worry about the X's and O's and just try to get out, move around and get our sea legs under us.
Yes, and being inside is the reality of basically any team in the Northeast. But how do you go about kind of mimicking game situations when you're stuck inside during these colder temperatures?
So what we'll do live at bats inside, in our cages. We'll simulate the timing of everything. We'll have the pitch clock set up for the hitters and the pitchers. We'll have an umpire come out, so he's back there calling balls and strikes. We'll have the music going between innings. We'll have walkout music, everything except the guy announcing the people going into the cage and who's pitching to try to get all the timing exactly right. So the guys feel comfortable when they step on the field for the first time.
So you had a lot of success last year winning the conference. What did you learn from that experience about what it takes to be successful?
Ooh, so I think the biggest thing last year was everyone was bought into our culture wholeheartedly. Everyone cared about each other. Everyone wanted to win for each other. So the brotherhood was really strong. We also had a lot of talented baseball players, which always is a good thing. But yeah, I think everyone buying into the culture and having a clear goal in mind, and a clear path how to get to that goal. I think that's the most important thing. Communication from coaching staff on what we're looking for and what we have seen works at the college level, and how to go about to get to having a good season and winning a championship. I think now that we have that experience, it's easier for us to lay that in front of them. So hopefully it kind of gets the guys going on that right path every year now.
Time now for a mound visit, courtesy of the Baseball Zone. Today, Coach Sean Schaefer discusses the common challenges that a high school hitter faces.
Understanding what their strength is at the plate. So, every player has a different profile. Some hit for power, some hit for average. And I think having them understand what they can do at the plate is their biggest asset. So, some smaller kids might not be able to hit home runs and doubles. So they need to understand that they got to hit the ball hard on a line drive. If you're a bigger player, maybe you're trying to elevate the ball a little bit more. So trying to figure out what their strengths and how that best plays to their game. That's their biggest asset as a hitter. And then I think the other thing from a hitting standpoint is swinging decisions. So a lot of hitters get a little bit anxious in the plate and they always want to swing, which is, it can be a good thought, but it's understanding what pitches that they handle the best. And then when those pitches, get into the zone, that's when you want to swing. So swing decisions are a big part of it.
This has been a mound visit courtesy of the Baseball Zone. Now back to the action.
Let's jump to this year's team. This past fall, how do you feel like your fall went and going leading into the last few weeks of the season? What kind of final tweaks would you like to see the team make?
Yeah, so I was a little bit concerned this fall when we started because we had so many new guys, and whenever you have that many new guys, I feel like it's hard to build the strong culture and the strong camaraderie that you need to be successful. But luckily, everyone that we brought in was like an A1 human, right? They're excellent teammates. We did excellent academically this fall, and everyone bought in 100% to what we were doing. I think it's because of the season that we had last year. Everyone they didn't want to let the guys down that had been here before. They wanted to keep that going. So it was an excellent fall. We had a lot of good development going on. All the new players that we brought in really fit in well. We did a lot of team building, which was huge for us, so everyone could kind of get comfortable with each other. I think it was like 22 or 23 new guys. So that was a big stepping stone for us in the fall. And then in the spring, right now, we're just looking. We pretty much turn the spring into compete mode. We don't come back like we start team practice on Friday and individuals tomorrow, but we're not coming back and doing swing changes and inserting a whole bunch of new defensive plays or changing things up too much. We just kind of get into compete mode right off the bat and try to put those battles one on one in the cages to get ready for the first game.
When we had Rob on, I mentioned to him, I said nobody recruits Canadians more than Niagara, and he credited you a lot. He obviously credited you for a lot of that. So, how important is it for a program like Niagara to tap into the Canadian pipeline?
Yeah. So for us, it's probably we're probably one of the most important schools in that aspect because of how close we are. So you kind of have a circle right around your school of recruiting and of where you're going to get a lot of guys. And if we don't tap into that Ontario market, then we're kind of just cutting off our circle and just going south to Ohio and Pennsylvania, right? So it's just a natural progression to look up there. Aside from that, I have a ton of connections, throughout the whole country. I was lucky enough to be, played with a lot of guys who are in the travel ball, world right now up there. Even coached by some of them, like Rich Leach with the Mets was a coach of mine when I was like 12 or 13, right? So it comes full circle. But we've been able to like build some good trust with them, and they trust what we're doing, and they trust our development path for their guys and stuff, and and they get a chance to play right away here. So, they're not coming and sitting and waiting for guys to graduate or move on. They're getting on the field early, and I think that helps their development a lot as well.
How much recruiting are you now responsible for as the head coach?
It pretty much hasn't changed. Like Rob and I pretty much did, recruiting 50-50, and we're myself and Matt, my new assistant coaches, we're in the same boat. He's from the West Coast too, like Rob was, so he has a lot of connections out there in the Western states. So it's helped a little bit as we move forward to 2026 recruiting. But yeah, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things that's been so impressive, I think, about Niagara's Canadian recruiting is it's really been coast to coast. I mean, you look for guys from East Coast all the way to the West Coast. How did you go about forming all these relationships, and what's the process like of maintaining them?
So maintaining them, it's just communication, right? Phone calls, checking in, texts, how you doing, happy birthday, Merry Christmas, all those kind of things, just to stay connected to everybody. But as far as the West Coast goes, when we first got some guys from Langley, I competed against Doug Matheson's son when he was on Team BC for Canada Summer Games. So Doug knew who I was, and just talked to him a little bit and built a relationship to get the first couple guys from there. And then once it filtered through the BC league that it was a good spot to go, and the program was in a good direction, you get a couple more guys, North Shore Twins and stuff like that. So that's how that's gone. And then it's pretty much the same thing throughout Alberta, like Vauxhall and Okotoks. Competed against some of those guys, had known Les for a long time, known Jeff over at Okotoks for probably like 15 years now, and then all the Ontario guys have known him for you know pretty much half my life, right? Growing up playing against them and stuff like that. So they know what I'm all about. They know what the program's all about. So again, like it gives comfort and in sending their players there where they know that they're going to get a straight shot, and it's a good program to get into.
You mentioned reaching out and saying Merry Christmas. Is there a Matt Spatafora Christmas card floating around somewhere?
No, 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 just straight text. I'm not that creative.
What are some of the biggest challenges about recruiting in Canada right now? I've mentioned before, you probably the Canadian dollar is a big one. Is there anything else that kind of is a challenge in coming north of the border to find players?
I would say that's the biggest challenge is the dollar. You know, I used to tell guys when I went to school, so I went to junior college, right? The dollar, you may remember it. It was like 50 cents on the dollar back then, right? So if you got a big scholarship, well, it would just get eliminated because of the exchange rate. So still today, with the way it is going now, I think that the biggest challenge is the money side of it. Insurance has become a big thing now with all American schools, where Canadian insurance is not accepted, so kids have to get most of the time insurance through the school that they're at. So that's another cost that usually programs can't cover because it's coming straight from the school. So I would say that the monetary is the biggest hurdle.
You've coached for a long time, you've recruited for a long time. How has coaching players changed from when you first started to today?
I think it's the access to information that the players have now, right? So you just can't you have to know your stuff. You have to know what you're delivering to them, and you have to make it kind of individualized so that they just don't think you're rolling the ball out and just doing a drill because you're doing a drill, for the sake of doing a drill, right? So that's one thing that we do at our place. I try to, on the offensive side, even the pitching side, Matt does the same thing. We kind of try to look at the specific guy and try to develop drills and adjustments that are specific to them instead of going in and just everyone's doing, a specific drill that day before we hit BP or something like that. So I think the access to the information that the players have is probably the biggest change in that aspect.
Does Niagara use a lot of technology when during like kind of the development phase of the fall and into the spring?
Yeah, we do. We use Rapsodo on the pitching and the hitting side. We have a Aware camera system at our field, which is an 8 camera system that kind of logs everything you do on our field. So, for instance, Matt bets every time you hit on the field, all your swings and BP and inner squad get logged to your file, which you can access at any time. So it's a huge, huge bonus in our development because guys can access that. It's like 45 seconds after your at bat's done. You can watch it on the iPad in the dugout. We have Synergy, which everyone does now for video analysis. We don't have a TrackMan on the field. That's pretty much the only thing that we don't have access to with technology wise.
I mean, that's got to be a major change too. I remember when I was playing, I was writing stuff down in a notebook.
Oh yeah, but I mean, notebook's a big thing for us too. We try to guys get journals and make notes. And one of our best players last year, he would have his journal out every day in the dugout, practice games, making notes. So that's individualized to the person. I think if someone's analytical like that and they need to write everything down and watch it and read it back to themselves every day. So we do a little bit of old school stuff too.
Just one more question on recruiting. How important is social media now? Is that something that you look at for not necessarily look for guys on social media, but guys that posting on social media that you see? Is that something that you take into account, or is it more so building those relationships and seeing them in person?
Yeah, no, social media, to be honest, is almost going to be taken over, I think, with like a major aspect of recruiting because it's one of the easiest ways to get your stuff out there for free for every coach to see, right? So you post a video online of you hitting, and then it's just a quick phone call to that guy's coach or a little bit more research if you don't have that coach's number in your phone or your Rolodex, but it opens up the door for a lot of kids, social media, and it also helps, kids understand your program when you have a strong social media platform, like posting videos and highlight tapes and everything like that. So it gives the kids a lot of information as well. So I just think the more information that you can have out there for the kids and the programs is a good thing.
So I've asked every coach this that we've talked to, college coach. I kind of want to get your thoughts on the state of the NCAA, and what I mean by that is, whether it's the junior college eligibility stuff or the transfer portal. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you kind of use those things, those tools, and to your advantage?
Oh, that's a lot. That's a big question, right?
That's why I
So
usually leave
so
it for the end.
yeah, no, that's okay. So yeah, so the portal, I think the portal is a good thing, right? Because it allows the kids to have choice. Um, whether they're leaving your school or not, you might not be happy with the choice, but it gives them the choice of whether they want to explore something else or stay because you have a strong program built, and then they're just happy staying. The grass is always not greener. That's a choice that everyone has to make, whether it's a coach leaving or a player leaving. Sometimes you get a better opportunity. Like we had 3 pro guys this past season, and all 3 of them came from the portal, right? They weren't playing at the schools that they were at. They needed a little bit more development. They needed to get on the field a little bit more, and their talents come out, and now they're pros, right? Um, the other side of it is you develop guys and then they leave to go to bigger programs, and that hurts the program a little bit. So in that aspect, you just have to run a strong program where guys don't feel the need to leave all the time, right? They're getting what they need, they're getting fulfilled. They see that they have a chance to play pro ball. They're going to get a good degree. Um, so there's pros and cons of both side of it. Um,
Do
the
you feel
money aspect of it is definitely a thing now, which a lot of schools can't take part of. We don't have a huge NIL collective. We do have one, but it's not to the size of, one of these major schools, which if someone's looking for that as they move forward, there's really nothing you can do to stop them from going there and taking that money. So as far as that goes, it's turned a little bit into free agency every year, as long as you stay eligible. Now, with all these different rules and laws about working and stuff, you might not have to stay eligible every. Who knows where it's going to go with that kind of stuff, right? You just might have to be in school. So it's kind of an every day is changing, and every morning I just wake up and just see if anything's changed and kind of roll with it.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask you to predict the future, but are there any tweaks that you think could be immediately made to maybe smooth out the process? Because it seems like a lot of this stuff is good, but it could turn into a slippery slope kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean the only thing, I don't know I mean there could be I could just spout off of crazy stuff like maybe a cap to transfers, maybe a cap to the amount of NIL that each team is able to give. But I don't know the legal ramifications to all of that kind of stuff either, right? That's always in the back of everyone's mind these days. But yeah, I mean, I'll leave that to the guys who make a little more than me to figure out. But but yeah, like on the JUCO thing, they gave the extra year to the JUCO seniors right now. But if that goes through, there's going to be every junior on every team in the country who played JUCO or transferred from an NAIA is going to say, well, now I deserve another year too, right? So then that's going to get opened up to, they're going to have to get another year. So at what point is it where everyone's going to get another year or two if you came from something other than an NCAA program? So like I said, I just kind of play it by ear and roll with what's put in front of me, and we do the best we can with recruiting guys and keeping them and getting them on the pro ball.
Do you think there's and then maybe this isn't even necessarily a concern, but that it's going to be hard? Do you think it's going to be harder for high school players to make the jump right to a 4-year school?
Yeah, I do think it's going to be harder for the high school athlete. Because they're just not as physical as the guys that are going to be able to transfer um, freely and then not lose their eligibility, especially if that comes through, right? Because you would be crazy to not take the JUCO guy who is a really talented player who also has 4 years left and played 2 years of junior college baseball already, right? So the only thing you can say in that realm is, well, if he's that good, you might lose him after a year to the draft, and you might want to invest in the high school guy who's just as talented. You'll have him for 3 years. So there's going to be a ton of things that each individual program is going to have to look at and kind of input that into their recruiting philosophy, I think, and and how many guys they want to turn over each year and where they want to invest their money.
I want to end on a Niagara question for the upcoming season. What are your expectations for this team, and how do you go about setting them leading into the season?
Yeah, so we're just setting the expectation of going out and competing one pitch at a time. We don't go out and say, we want to win 30 games or we want to win 20 conference games. Our goal basically is to win each pitch that we deliver each game. And then everything's process oriented, right? We're not trying to go out and hit 300 as a team. We're trying to go out and have 50% quality at bats for a game, because our research shows that if we can do that, the process will give us a really good chance of winning that specific game, right? So that's really the main points of instilling to our guys in the preseason is competing one pitch at a time, staying present in each moment, not thinking ahead, not looking back. um, it helps with not taking weekends off and looking ahead to something else, because you're just where your feet are each time you step out there.
I've already had people reach out to me saying they're looking forward to this episode specifically, probably because of a lot of those relationships you've built. And I think it's certainly lived up to the expectation. Matt, we really appreciate you taking the time.
Beauty. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you do everything you do for Canadian baseball. It's awesome to follow you on Twitter and see where all the guys are going. That's one thing I still like watching, even when we in recruiting battles for Canadian guys and we don't get them, I like to follow them, and because I kind of have a vested interest in it, still being from Toronto. So it's a great thing that you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and best of luck this season.
Okay, pal. Thanks so much.
We got a whole lot closer to the border this time, speaking with Niagara University head coach Matt Spatafora, new head coach, we should say. Great conversation. No one's recruited more in Canada than he has. So it was really interesting to hear kind of how he goes about that.
Making our way touring around the college scene. And yeah, like what a privilege again. All these interviews have been so great, so illuminating, these different perspectives on baseball and like Matt said, like just a chance to really kind of talk baseball and kind of explain, where he's at. And it's an exciting time, I think, for these coaches. And, you can just hear the passion in all of them, right? There's a real passion, real dedication to the game that is really infectious and, really motivating too.
Yeah, and I love they're going down to the University of Miami opening weekend of a huge test. But like I said, they beat Florida State a few years ago. So that's kind of the interesting part about the early part of the college baseball season. You see some of these big power schools playing some of these smaller schools. But in a game like baseball, we've seen it over and over again, even at the big league level. You never know what's going to happen. It was another great episode with Matt Spatafora. Really appreciate him taking the time, and we appreciate you giving this one a listen. Until next time, take care.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to check out Canadian Baseball Network for extensive and comprehensive coverage of the latest in Canadian baseball. And the Baseball Zone, Canada's leading instructional baseball academy and training home to thousands of MLB pro, college, and youth baseball players.